You're bringing in people that hate what you consider freedoms, free speech, religious tolerance, equality of the sexes, you know, protection of the rights of gays and all this. That doesn't exist in the Middle East. And yet you're importing people who not only believe in these things, but believe that you are decadent and they're going to change you, the host, not the guest. And so that's why we have these cycles in Western society of radical left-wing revolution, and then about every 20 or 30 years, some guy like Reagan or Trump comes along and said, this is madness. I got to clean up this crazy experimentation.
Hello and welcome to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. This is our Friday news roundup, and we've got lots of news, of course, about Trump this week, and then some things on Europe. So we're going to start with stories on those things. So stay with us, and we'll be right back from these messages. Welcome back to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. You can find Victor on his website, victorhanson.com. The name of the website is The Blade of Perseus, and you can join for subscriber material only for $6.50 a month or $65 a year. And Victor is the Martin and Neely Anderson Senior Fellow in Military History and Classics at the Hoover Institution and the Wayne and Marcia Buskey Distinguished Fellow in History at Hillsdale College. So, Victor, we've got lots about Trump. Every week on the news roundup, I like to start with things because Trump is so successful and he's letting us know what it is to be president, I think. And so the first thing with Trump is one of his new challenges, which is the cartels. Apparently, they blew up a cartel drug-running boat in the Caribbean, I believe it was. And I was wondering your thoughts on his new entree into the cartel world.
Well, he has parameters in which he has to work within. The MAGA base does not want optional military engagements, especially on the ground, especially a long way. But they're worried, and we all are, that these drugs are making their way from the Caribbean either directly into the United States or into Mexico and across the border. And as one of our listeners has just written me, he wanted me to, I think, correctly emphasize again that when we say fentanyl or these drugs, we're not talking about something that comes across the border that says, fentanyl, beware, or it's like crack cocaine, you can identify it. In many cases, they go into border industries or factories even, and they appear as amphetamines, depressives, mood relaxers, Ativan, Valium, Seconal. So people take these thinking they're going to get a high or maybe a low, but they have no idea that they're one of the prime ways in which hospitals lessen pain and with very powerful drugs, and they're dying. So Trump says, we're going to go do this, and it's going to be a confined operation, a one-off. That's very important that he understands that, and I think he does more than any other president I've seen. He's trying to create deterrence without endless forever wars. So he's telling the cartels, when you get into international waters or you get close to the United States and our territory or even approaching us, we're going to take you out. So please don't do it. That's basically the lesson he's doing.
Did you see that Maduro said that he is, let me get his words right, that he would be an all-out war on the continent? It would be, he said, this war on the drug cartels. And Maduro, just to remind everybody, is Venezuela's president.
Yeah, and he's just a Hugo Chavez effigy, and he stole an election. He's very unpopular. He's destroyed one of the wealthiest countries in South America with one of the largest reserves of fossil fuels in the world. It's hard to do, to destroy that legacy and those resources, but he's done it. I hope Mr. Mondani is looking at Venezuela to see what destroys civilizations when he takes over in New York. Of course, socialists and communists never learn. They don't do it to better people. They do it to maintain their own power under the guise or the veneer they're helping the people. But I don't think Latin America is going to rally to his clarion call because he's a thug, and the people, as I said, don't like him. And what is he going to do to the United States? We're letting in Venezuelans that we feel were political dissidents, and we're trying to deport his supporters that snuck in under Biden. Just as passing, I don't think any of us, it's so bewildering to have that open border and 10 to 12 million people who came in. And we still don't understand, we don't grasp the significance and the magnitude of 12 million people. Was it because they wanted to alter the politics and the demography of America? Was it they were just incompetent? Or is it just that they were nihilistic and mean? They just thought, we're going to destroy this border and all you people are going to... I don't know. I don't have the answer. But it's the weirdest thing, I think, in modern American history that an administration in 4 years would deliberately try to destroy the border and let in the poorest people without any audit or background in a time in 2021 when it started of COVID and diseases and everything and criminal records, and then have these people present us on the left with this new axiom that it was moral to break the law and let people in illegally, and it's amoral to enforce the law and return them legally to their home.
Well, let's turn then to other things, Trump, and perhaps the media in this case, and not Trump himself, but apparently he was taking a vacation and golfing for a couple of days and didn't entertain the media with an interview. And so there was all this media out there. I guess it shows the power of the internet, saying that he might be dead or he was dead. So I was wondering your thoughts on the media mistakes, I guess we would say, that social...
Yeah, they were almost gleeful that they had not heard. I mean, he didn't go into a Biden, as he pointed out. It wasn't in Biden mode where you just didn't hear from him for days on end. Or it wasn't General Austin who just checked out with a medical procedure, prostate operation, and we never heard from him. He was sort of like a regular president. He took a weekend off, Labor Day weekend, and he played golf, and he didn't want the media anywhere around him. And they went hysterical, but they were happy about it because they thought there might be some illness that he was... You remember when Melania went in, I think she had a bruise or some kind of procedure, and immediately they said that she was a victim of spousal abuse. So they're irresponsible. And then you have this, I don't know what he is anymore. Tim Walz, the unsuccessful vice presidential candidate of the Democrats, he gets on stage and he wears these adolescent high water pants and these weird suits, and then he either lies about his past, or he engages in profanity and potty mouth slurs, or he says something that's just nihilistic, like when he was rooting and so happy that he said he looked at the Tesla stock each morning and was delighted as it went down during the days of demonization of Elon Musk. And then somebody reminded him, hey, you're the governor of Minnesota. They have a investment portfolio. They lost millions of dollars. Are you cheering that on? And now he gets up and he says to a crowd, and he always is captivated by a crowd and becomes even more sloppy in his expression, that he says, well, when, I didn't hear about Trump and we thought he wasn't there, and one day you'll get a call and he won't be there. It's laughing like, I want him dead. Here's a guy who's just survived last summer 2 assassination attempts, and you have the major candidate's vice president nominee in 2024 hoping openly, publicly, that the president of the United States will be dead soon. If you did that with Obama, do you remember Obama? One person was in the Missouri State Fair. I'm doing this by memory. And he wore a mask as the circus clown, that's what clowns do in the rodeo, I should say, not circus, but he was banned for life from the Missouri rodeo just for wearing a mask that caricatured Obama. There was zero tolerance for any of that. And yet here we are with a major political figure calling basically for the death of the president.
So, Victor, let's turn then to the Chicago resistance to the National Guard. So this week, Donald Trump has said that we're going in. And what I don't know is Trump trolling them in the sense that he's trying to get them to say really stupid things that in support of criminals, or that they're not going to worry so much about criminals, or to lie about the violence that's so evident in Chicago, and let him do all that and do damage to the Democratic brand. And then he'll go in with the National Guard maybe, or he'll just leave it and let them just destroy their Democratic
I think there's a
brand.
lot of things going on. He has a 30-day window because Washington is actually a federal city. It's outsourced autonomy to local officials, but ultimately the federal government is in charge of it. So going into Washington, there was a lot of arguments for it. It was a complete mess. It was too violent. It was the nation's showcase. People all over the world's first impression when they came to do business or something was Washington. And the people there wanted it. And now he's got results. It's dramatic results. So he's looking at this, and I think he's trying to show everybody that this is a model that they could employ if they were to partnership with him. But under various court rulings and statutes, it's very hard for a president to put troops into a particular city if A, there's not an ongoing riot or insurrection, mass violence, and where you almost have to de facto call martial law or something. Something like Rodney King when Colin Powell wrote George H.W. Bush and said, "Hey, I'm ready anytime you are." And the first Bush said, "Okay, send in 5,000 Marines." But they had the support of local authorities. But when you don't have the support, and remember, the 20 most crime-ridden, violent cities in America are under the auspices of Democratic governors. So when Tim Walz or Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries say, well, why doesn't he go into red states? It doesn't matter, because in red states, there's blue enclaves where the problem is. So he will. But the reason that he's looking at Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York is not because they're black dominated or they're run by black mayors. It's because they're the biggest cities and the most iconic in the United States, and they're among the most violent, if not in per capita crime, just in overall crime. So what he's trying to do, I think, is ramp up the pressure. And what happens is one of Trump's legacies will be that he creates such hatred from the left that they expose who they are in a way they never would before. They were too careful. And he scrapes off their veneer. So Pritzker then he walks with a huge security detail at 6:30 in the morning along the $1 Million Mile shore and says, "Hey, it's safe." And all we would ask him, would you get on the subway at 2 in the morning by yourself? And the answer is no. Would you live in this neighborhood by yourself and sleep overnight? No. No. So what is Trump going to do? If he goes in there, the left thinks that they can hijack the crime issue, and because they think that they won't help him, and it won't be like Washington where Muriel Bowser was kind of forced to help him because he went in there so quickly and he got such quick results. She wanted to take credit for it. And he has a shelf life where he has to get out. She's worried that when he gets out of Washington in a week or two, it'll go bad. And then he can say, well, when I'm here, it works. And when you're there, it doesn't. So she's now calling for an extension. But so I don't know myself, if I was a political advisor to Trump, I would say don't go in, because you will get immediate results when you go in, but they will not cooperate with you. They will not cooperate with you, and they will demonstrate, and they will try to have a performance art. And I say that with some reluctance, because people will die if he does not go in there. But I would not go in there. If I were to go in, I would go into a red state, blue city, high crime area, like Memphis or something. You know what I mean? Even though it's not iconic, it's not a big city like these three, but it's a lose-lose situation. But he can just concentrate on Washington and make it just an iconic, safe place. because it isn't in federal jurisdictions, and everybody can look at it, and he can just say, look at Washington, and I wanted to help everybody. I think he's also, when he says, I'm going to go in, I think he really doesn't want to go in, because I think he's got astute advisors that have told Trump, this is a lose-lose situation, because these mayors are insurrectionists. They don't want to help you. They will oppose you. And the police hierarchy will be scared because they know when you leave, they will be punished by these decrepit mayors. Johnson, who wants to deal with Johnson? And who knows what's going to happen in New York with the next mayor? And, we've seen what happens in Los Angeles when you're dealing with the mayor and the governor.
The left seems to be using this to conjure up conspiracy theories again, that so what Pritzker has said is Trump wants to get the National Guard, so he has troops on the ground in Illinois, and then he's going to try to steal the election by threatening people with these troops somehow. And that's what he
knows that they've already quasi-stole the election because they redistrict in a way that's so disproportionate. I think there's
You mean the Democrats, not the Republicans?
I think there's only 3 congressional seats that are Republican held, and 17 that are left-wing, even the vote. I used to, when I was younger, I would go to a city and rent a car, and I would go speak at Montessori schools. And it was nothing about politics. It was nothing about classics. It was just about agriculture, because I wrote 2 books on it at that time in the 90s. And I would drive. And one of the places I used to drive was Southern Illinois, to little towns. And it's just, as people listening from Southern Illinois know, it's a southern place. And it's very conservative. And outside of Chicago, this state is probably 60% conservative. But they get no representation. So when he says he's going to disrupt, he's already disrupted democracy, that machinery in Illinois. And he looks buffoonish when he said there was no crime, as we just said, when there is crime. Big cities have crime, not like Chicago. And the existential question is, where's Barack Obama? That's his city. Remember, Chicago style. And remember, we went to Philadelphia in 2008. We're from Chicago, and we get in their face. And when they take a knife, we bring a gun. Getting that David Mamet, Sean Connery line in the Untouchables. So, where's he? Can he fly in? He's got this big monstrosity in the park, this ugly monolith that was supposed to be his presidential library. That's a fiasco, because he basically virtue signaled to everyone that he was going to hire the contractors on the basis of their race, not their proven talent in finishing a job efficiently and quickly. So then he just said, I've got all this money I raised. Here's this monolith for my library. I'm going to destroy this park and this nice traditional community, and I'm gone to my Hawaii or maybe my Martha's Vineyard resort. So he's the missing person, and he should be there, and he should say, why doesn't he walk the streets? Where's Rahm Emanuel? He's always on TV. He's the ex-mayor. Why doesn't he and Obama say, we have Chicago roots, and get with Johnson? But they don't. They just sit there and call Trump names or do this. It's like the whole Democratic Party. Do you have a shadow government? That is, do you have a would-be presidential candidate, a would-be secretary, a senior statesman in all the cabinet seat level position? No. Do you have an alternate agenda? This is what we can do with the border. This is how we'll solve the Ukraine war. This is how we'll deal with the nuclear project. No, none at all. Do you have any interest in bipartisan legislation? Well, we all are facing, whether Republican or Democrat, a $37 trillion debt. This is our proposal. Nothing. It's just, you know what it is? I'm going to scream like this. Ken Martin, the head of the Democratic National Convention, he said the other day that Trump is a fascist, and we've got to bring pencils. No longer do we bring pencils to a gunfight. Mr. Martin, what did you think impeaching a president twice for the first time in history, trying him as a private citizen, getting him off state ballots, 5 lawfare, 93 indictments in total, raiding his home, going after his wife's underwear drawer, debanking the family so they couldn't bank. That wasn't pencil. That was bringing a gun to a fight. That's what you've been doing. And when they say fascism, you want to you just define it. That's my biggest frustrator with the left right now. They just don't define their terms. Just tell us what you mean when, you know, okay, Tim Walsh, you say you want to wake up one morning and you want him dead. So then tell us exactly what that means. How do you want him dead? You want him just die? Do you think that's good? Do you get him out of the way? Can you explain why? Is that dangerous to the body politic to wish a president dead? If you were a private citizen, would you get a call from the Secret Service? And when you say that he's a fascist, just tell us exactly how he's conducting fascism. Has he withheld an election? Has he tried to warp an election like Hillary Clinton with the dossier? I don't think so. Does he weaponize the FBI or the CIA in the fashion of, John Brennan or James Comey? But they don't, they're just vague, just throw it out there. And it's like, it's a kamikaze strategy of the left right now. We're going to be so obnoxious, so hysterical. We'll get Jasmine Crockett one day. We'll get Elizabeth Warren the next day. We'll get the squad. We'll scream. We'll yell. We'll get Spartacus doing this. We're going to use so many profanities. Bring out Al Green to shake his cane and say the F word. We'll do all of that. And we'll make things so uncomfortable that we'll all lay down in a fetal position and put our hands over our ears and scream, make it all go away. Please make it all go away. I don't care who it is, Democrats, Republicans, Trump, just make it all go away. That is the strategy.
Yes. All right. So speaking of strategies, we'll turn to Europe and maybe what their strategies need to be given the current conditions after these messages. Stay with us and we'll be right back.
If you want to drop extra pounds, boost energy levels, or reduce swelling in your legs and feet, then this message is for you. Pure Health Research is on a mission to make America healthy again. And two of their best-selling health supplements are leading the way. First is Liver Health Formula. Over 100 million Americans have a sluggish liver riddled with fatty deposits. This can kill your metabolism, pile on the pounds, and make you feel tired. Liver Health Formula takes care of all that. It supports thriving liver health with special nutrients like artichoke extract and milk thistle. This is one of the easiest ways to slim down and revitalize your energy levels. Next is lymph system support. If you struggle with fluid buildup or swelling in your legs, ankles, or feet, this is for you. This natural ingredient in lymph system support helps gently flush extra fluid and toxins out of your body. And right now, for a limited time, you can get 35% off Liver Health Formula and Lymph System Support, along with all 50-plus health supplements Pure Health Research has to offer. Head over to purehealthresearch.com and use the coupon code VICTOR at checkout. That's purehealthresearch.com with the coupon code VICTOR to save 35% on your order today.
Welcome back to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. So, Victor, you recently wrote an article called Europe in the Balance, and it seemed like a blueprint for what's going wrong with Europe, and maybe Europeans would benefit from reading it with their immigration policy, their energy policy, and then the U.S. putting a little pressure on them in NATO and in trade deficits.
I'm really worried about Europe. The Wall Street Journal had an article on France recently, and people are saying, Italy was proverbial the weak nation in Europe. If you look at France and debt and social tension, and you have all of these conservative parties that are rising up, but they don't let them, they're sort of like redistricting in the United States. They have institutional barriers to them. We saw that with the Alternative for Deutschland. And in the parliamentary system, you can thwart populist movements much easier. And so what are the pathologies that are going to make Europe? It's a very wealthy continent. It was, the birthplace of the West and the most wealthy place on the planet until about 1890 with the rise of the United States, which was reflective of European values. And the birth rate is 1.4. The birth rate in France is about 1.78, and Muslim families it's about 7 to 8. 7 to 8. It's about 5 times higher. And when you get up to a magical percentage of about 20% of unassimilated illegal immigrants or legal green card holders or even citizens, and they're not integrated, assimilated, acculturated, and their belief system from the Middle East is antithetical to liberal Western values of religious tolerance, equality of the sexes, all that, consensual government. Then you add in the fact that the social welfare system is broke. What you're seeing in Europe is women, professional women, are not having children. So you're creating a real degree of anger because the average French person with a 1.7 or so replacement rate, there's families that don't have any children because they want to satisfy their appetites without the expense. So they are paying for a unsustainable social welfare for immigrants with 8 children. And then you add that the borders are fluid. Remember Merkel, yes, we can do this, we can do that. No, you can't. You didn't. That was your greatest failure. She's a Joe Biden failure on the border. And then second, it's not just the fertility rate, I should say third, it's not just illegal immigration. They willfully destroyed competitive energy. They were so ideological, they were almost like commissars, and they said, zero emissions. And we know that China has 2 fossil fuel plants a month opening, mostly coal, but we're going to be so virtuous and utopian that the Chinese are going to look at us and say, we'll follow suit. And the Chinese said, we like these suckers. They're stupid. And we're going to make a huge export market of solar panels and wind turbines to feed their ignorance and make sure their energy is too high price, too uncompetitive. They're going to fade. Meanwhile, we're going to build the most disruptive hydroelectric project in the world, which they're doing now, and as many nuclear and coal plants as we can, and let them just dream on. And so they've really priced themselves out of competitive business with their energy costs. Germany is the worst. Why did they think solar? I've been to Germany maybe 10, 15 times. I don't think I've ever been there with 2 sunny days in a row. Same thing with Britain. And I don't understand what they're doing with their power. So immigration, power, fluid borders, they have no military. Everybody says, well, Trump is beating around, he's pushing around the Europeans to contribute 5%, or they all had to come to save Zelensky. No, they come here for one reason. That array of Europe, they are terrified of this Russian monstrosity right on their border. And they have a long history of knowing what Russia is like, whether it's ideologically akin to Putin or not. They know that. And they know that they cannot and they will not arm. And worse about it, they know that they are the font of European military development. Everything from hoplites to legions to motorized vehicles to airplanes that came from Europe and the United States, but also Europe. And they have 500 million people, and they have the 3rd largest GDP, and they know they could do it. But to do it, they would have to cut back on their social welfare, and they'd either get a riot, another, green-vested French riot or something, and they're not going to do it. They're never going to spend $500 billion to do that. The final thing is, in reaction to all of this disruption that they caused and the political fallout, they will not allow people to voice dissent. So what they do is they say hate speech, they just copy us, disinformation, misinformation, they bully people, and they become kind of like fascist countries. That's what's so weird when this Ken Martin said Trump was a fascist, and I just said, who is trying to censor free thought? Who says that if you say something about transgenderism, you're going to be, in Europe, you're going to be put in jail. But here, you're going to be socially or politically ostracized. So I don't know how they're going to get out of it. Can you tell the European people, if you're a leader, hey, everybody, unless you're an Eastern European leader and you had to deal with commies in your country and the Soviet bear breathing down your neck, and then before that, the fascist Germans, are you going to be able, If you're not Poland or Romania or Hungary, are you going to be able to tell Western, hey, you guys, no more latte. You got to get up at 6 in the morning. You got to work as hard as you can. You got to have 2 or 3 kids. We've got to pay down the debt. We've got to get the borders secure. If anybody's here illegally, don't complain. We're going to deport them. We're going to deport. And all of you people who came here on green cards, you're going to have to go home. And all you people who came from the Middle East who are citizens, you're going to assimilate. So we're not going to have this and that special consideration for you. That's what it is. And can they do that? And we're going to have a wide open free speech and free research. I don't think they can do it.
Well, perhaps they'll generate enough hostility among their own population for things like
they've already done that.
And I know you and Jack talked about the Axe girl in Scotland, which was shocking that they arrested her and did nothing to anybody else. But they also arrested a comedian coming back from the United States. And what was his crime? He had put 3 tweets on his social media about transgenderism. And that was arrestable. And it's just a strange thing. They would never have arrested anybody 5 years ago for things like that. You know?
I think J.K. Rowling made a good point that the only time the popular culture and the officials in Europe and Britain in particular get angry about violence to women if the woman has male genitalia. Then they will get angry. But women, as we know, were groomed and raped at a very young age by Pakistani immigrants. They were turned into sexual helots. No one said anything for they kept it up because they didn't want to be considered illiberal. And she was right. She's actually a really brilliant, courageous woman. I really admire her because she just has a novelist skill to put everything succinctly and in a very unusual way when she said, basically, if you're raped in the UK and you have a male organ and say you're a woman, you're going to be protected, but not if you're a real woman. And I don't quite understand, the transgender thing, because we keep saying it was about 1 or 2 per 100,000, even less in the literature of people suffering from gender dysphoria prior to this fetishization of transgenderism. The only thing I can think of is it's the last civil rights cause for the left of radical mandated equality, and the gay liberation movement, gay marriage, women's liberation, civil rights movement, that's all there. And they really can't latch on to other oppressed minorities like Asians or something because they have higher incomes than whites. Indians, 5 million Indian immigrants are the highest per capita ethnic group in America as far as income. So I think they look at transgender as this is the final thing we can show how much moral superiority we are. We're so much better. Transgender, they are being oppressed. And like I said with Jack, they just throw out all of their prior prohibitions. We're not going to worry about dangerous hormones. We're not going to worry about dangerous procedures, dangerous antidepressants. We're going to put this in a 14-year-old kid. And that's just what we're going to do. And if you object and say that this is dangerous to his physical or mental health, we're going to call you a transphobe. And if we're in England, we're going to put you in jail. I really like that comedian. He had utter contempt for those people that did that to him, although his blood pressure went up to 200.
Yeah, I saw that. He had a hospital incident after that.
Remind me of myself. Whenever I go to a doctor, my blood pressure is like I suffer from low blood pressure, 110/60, and I start to get near the dentist office, doctor's office. I did some tests recently, and as I got nearer and nearer, and then I sit down, and it's like, wow, do you know that you have on control? I mean, it can go from 110 to 170, 160, 150, just in a moment. And everybody would say, well, you better get that checked. No, it never happens anywhere else. And so when I heard that his blood pressure went up to 200 because he was dealing with these, and I have high respect for the medical profession, but I can imagine what that was like. He had to go to the hospital, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he was dealing with armed bobbies, and they don't send out armed bobbies except in the worst cases. Why they needed an armed bobby for somebody who was guilty of crimes on social media. I don't know, but that's crazy.
Just think about the Western world. You can, you will be put in jail almost, or you will be rough handled, or you will be stopped, or you will be denied of your civil rights in the English speaking world if you made fun of transgenderism. But you can threaten Donald Trump and kill him. And Judge Broadsburg, he will let you out without bail. Or you can be Tim Walz and then openly say that you want the President of the United States to die. Nothing, which is okay with me. It's a free society. But you can't even kid in a very mocking manner that was easily transparent that guy wasn't serious. You can't kid in the UK. I'm not sure you can do it here that easy either.
So, Victor, let's turn to. In fact, we were talking about that Boasberg who let out the woman. It seems very dangerous to me. He let off on parole, I believe it was, a woman who had threatened to kill Donald Trump on
He's the
social
go-to.
media.
Yeah, he's the go-to guy if you're a left-wing cherry-picking foundation that fuels lawsuits against Donald Trump. Remember, he's put a lot of stays on matters of immigration. So he's very famous now. Nobody would know anything about him. I think nobody would know anything about any of these lower court district or the third tier. And there's about 750 of them. So they're mostly obscure. And then all of a sudden, when Trump was in the wilderness, the left mastered with Soros money and other foundational funding. They went through computerized records of every one of these judges, and they got a list of 30 or 40. And then they came up with a novel idea that a judge anywhere in the United States could issue on a whim, cancel out a legislative, but especially an executive act, and it would apply to the entire United States. And so nobody cares. I mean, recently, a circuit appellate court, federal one, a circuit appellate New York looked at the Letitia James, Judge Engoron, and just basically threw out the whole $500 million fine. And these were liberal judges except for one or two. But do you think that Letitia James is upset? No. She's out there. She's facing mortgage fraud and interest fraud, but she's still out there with the surety or the assurance that no one's going to do anything to her. And Engoron, is he a disgraced judge? That was the most disgraceful judicial performance I've ever read about, what he did. Gag orders on Trump, showing off in the cameras, throwing out evidence from the Deutsche Bank that proved that Trump they didn't feel that he was overvaluing anything. They were not upset. But my point is, all these people know that there's no downside to what they do, and they become folk heroes. And so that's what Broadsburg's doing. Hey, I haven't been online in the news for a month. I better issue a ruling. Can anybody steer something to me about Donald Trump? Oh, some woman threatened to kill him and publicly did so, and she's in jail. I'll let her out. That'll get some news. I'll get famous for 2 or 3 days. If you're in the case of Judge Mershorn, his daughter will say, well, Dad, have you done anything lately? Because I've made over $90 million, my firm, for Democratic activist political campaigns, and you're getting stale. Time to step up. I know that sounds cynical, but that's how they operate. They just have to have the limelight. And they have no other. It's basically this. As I said, there's no shadow government. There's no alternative agenda. They don't have the House. They don't have the Senate. They don't have the presidency. So everybody looks to these lower court judges. They are the Democratic Party right now.
Victor, do you think this has something, though, to do with these left-wing judges and the left are disenchanted with the Western way of life, and so they have no shame in their judgments as being rational based on evidence? They have no shame in doing these things. I know you've suggested it's for clicks and public exposure, but I'm going to link this because I think they just are up against the system, and that's part of what they want to do. And I linked to a recent conference, the People's Conference for Palestine, where they had speakers get up inside of America and call for the fall, decline, we don't want America. And, that whole Western paradigm that the judges are an example of the resistance to that, and this whole conference where they're condemning America. What's her name? Rashida Tlaib was there, of course, right at the. What is it?
It's an old thing. I mean, it's an old tick in Western civilization. I can refer you to Catullus' poems written around 40, maybe 45, 50 BC, when he said, "Otium will destroy you. Leisure is going to destroy me." Great cities have been destroyed by leisure. Or I can refer to a poem that he wrote, the Attis poem, where a man cuts off his genitalia and becomes transgendered and becomes feminine in the middle of the poem and then regrets it. I can refer you to Suetonius's 12 Caesars, the life of 12 emperors from Julius Caesar down to Vespasian, and then Titus, and the last one was Domitian in 96. And what's in that corpus is transgenderism, orgies, fascination with food, exhibitionism, voyeurism. And then I can refer you to Petronius' Satyricon. That was written about 55, 60 AD by a very wealthy member of the senatorial class, Petronius Arbiter, the elegantiae, the judge of elegance. And that's all about effeminate men hating Rome, making fun of soldiers, etc. And I could even go into Tacitus. Calchas says, you Romans are very funny. You come in here and you make a desert and you call it peace. But my point is, and then you go to even earlier Aristophanes comedy. And what I'm getting at is there was a long corpus of Aristotle, Plato, to a lesser extent Xenophon, some of the Roman Stoics, that the combination of constitutional government, personal freedom, and market capitalism creates a lot of wealth that exceeds your personal body needs every day of food, shelter, protection, and it gives you excess time and freedom. And most humans, if they're not religious, if they're not operating in a shame culture, then they become decadent. And that means that they side with the victimizer and not the victim, because they're protected. Or they idolize the gladiator. This is a big common thing in Ovid and other places. The smelly, bloody gladiator. Ooh, wow, look at him. I'm a young woman with non-married Roman matron. Oh, I think he's cute. Oh, he's bleeding. But it's always predicated on one thing. These people know that they're protected. And so their ideology never comes back to them. When Pritzker said, this is not a crime city, as I said earlier, he's not going to live in the ghetto, inner city. And all these professors, I learned that very early when I listened to all these professors. I'm reviewing a book right now for Roger Kimball's New Criterion. And the professor talks about whiteness this and all of these things. But he's a very affluent guy. It's all just out there. He's not some guy who's 36 years old and got his PhD and he's in his little Honda Civic driving from one JC campus to the next to get 3 or 6 measly units to survive teaching part-time. He's a grandee at an Ivy League school. So yeah, he can say all that stuff. But if a guy that was part-time said all that stuff, the situationness of the other, as Foucault has reminded, all that stuff, his students would walk and they'd say, what did you do to that class? We're not going to give you $500 a month for that. Same thing about, crime, race, everything. So all these people who were for DEI and DEI and DEI, that didn't help the cause of Black America. All they had to do was go into, if you're at Stanford University and I'm for DEI, well, go over to East Palo Alto. Check into an apartment and start tutoring kids or do something. Help the police on weekends, but don't just, let's say that Claudine Gay is a heroic woman, plagiarist, incompetent, and then say that, oh, I helped to get her tenure. That didn't help anybody except themselves. They're virtue signaling performance art people. The left is, in these elite Western societies. And it's very fashionable to hate your own. Mr. Beckel, that was on one of our, remember, Oikophobia? He's a very brilliant guy. He doesn't get the attention that he's earned through the power of his thought, but he took these two Greek words that had been there in the lexicon, but he normalized it and said, Western oikophobia, hating your own house or household. And that is what we see in the West, especially in Europe. When you know what you're doing, you're bringing in people that hate what you consider freedoms, free speech, religious tolerance, equality of the sexes, protection of the rights of gays and all this. That doesn't exist in the Middle East. And yet you're importing people who not only believe in these things, but believe that you are decadent and they're going to change you, the host, not the guest. And so that's why we have these cycles in Western society of radical left-wing revolution, and then about every 20 or 30 years, some guy like Reagan or Trump comes along and said, this is madness. I got to clean up this crazy experimentation, and we'll see. And sometimes it's not. Unfortunately, the solution is scary. So when you have something like Weimar Germany, cabaret Germany, and you get National Socialism, or when you get nutty people like the Jacobins, then you get Napoleon. So it's very important that Trump succeeds within the parameters of constitutional government to stop the madness, this Jacobin revolution, and that his counter-revolution is lawful, and I think it is, but I worry that he don't be goaded into going into Chicago. From my view, going into Chicago is like going into the Middle East. I don't mean that the people of Chicago are like Middle East. I'm talking about the dangers of going in there and having the left go gaga because they can easily caricature you. If you go into Chicago, you could have zero crime the next day, and Mayor Johnson will have a racialized rally saying that you are a bigot and you know what I mean? He will. He doesn't care about people.
Yeah, it sure seems that the nature of the resistance inside the United States is really directed at, we want to destroy it, even with Boasberg and destroying justice and
That's
the sense of justice.
That was the genius of Richard Nixon. I mean, whatever you say about him, he had an uncanny insight into the left. So when he inherited the Vietnam War, he didn't start it. Started by JFK and amplified by LBJ. And when he came in on January 20th of 1969, he saw this mess and he saw everybody saying it was his war and he caused it. And there were these huge demonstrations. He just called the military up and said, I got to get a private army. We got to get a professional. I shouldn't say private. We have to get a professional army of volunteer army because that's the only way this will stop. And they said, no, these people are principled. They wouldn't want some kid that's 18 years old and in East Palestine, Ohio, to volunteer because he needed the money. He'd never been out of his hometown and go all the way over to Quezon and die. They'll protest again. And he said, no, they won't. It's all about students in the elite universities. So I'll just give them a lottery. And I will turn a blind eye to people in the garden. I know I turned 18. I was at UC Santa Cruz in 1971. I got my draft number in the lottery, and there was there was nothing. I mean, and then he Vietnamesed it. In other words, Vietnamization. He just had no ground troops by 71. So then all of the whole anti-war movement faded, and he knew it would. And so I'm not saying that it wasn't justified, the anti-war movement or all that. I'm just saying that a lot of the left-wing hatred of their culture is performance art and predicated on their own ability to navigate around the consequences of their own, ideology. So when they say, oh, we got to get rid of coal plants, or we all got to get rid of nuclear plants, or we can't have hydroelectric, we got to blow up the dams, or we can't. When they go home at night, they know that wind and solar is not going to power their television set or their sauna or any of that. They expect some Mexican American guy or a poor white guy or a poor black guy to go in there at 3 a.m. and fix the transmission lines for PG&E or something. That's what they think. And they can say all they want, but their protected status, it's like DEI. I don't know how many times I've had people who were radical advocates of DEI tell me how they had to go to extreme lengths to get their children into Harvard or Yale or stuff. And you know what they say? It's so damning and self-incriminating. Well, I had to call up so-and-so, but they also want to brag on it. Well, I know Dean Wilson. We knew him at the club. I was on a European educational turn with President Smith. I gave him a call, let him show that my son had perfect SAT scores, even though it was option, that kind of stuff. It's always somebody else. It's and that's what was the genius of Trump. He said that somebody else is so often the lower middle classes. And I'm going to appeal to Hispanics, blacks, and poor whites as lower middle class people that are always at the short end of the stick. And that's why the elite hate him so much. I think one of the reasons.
Yeah. Well, Victor, let's go ahead and take a break and then come back and talk a little bit about what Pete Hegseth in the Defense Department is doing. Stay with us and we'll be right back. Are you ready to move easily and independently without pain or stiffness holding you back? Do you want to look in the mirror and see a plumb, hydrated glow instead of more fine lines and wrinkles? Discover Native Path Collagen. Made with only type 1 and 3 collagen fibers, the two most important types that make up 90% of the collagen in your body, found in your cartilage, bones, skin, hair, nails, and gut. Type 1 and 3 provide maximum benefits without the need for unnecessary fillers. Native Path Collagen is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners. Plus, it's third-party tested for heavy metals, ensuring purity and safety. Completely flavorless, Native Path Collagen can be added to anything. Coffee, smoothies, oatmeal, you name it. Its peptide formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes perfectly without clumping. And you can get 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. Visit getnativepath.com/Victor and start your transformation today. That is getnativepath.com/VICTOR. I personally love the PM Collagen formula with melatonin. It's given me many nights of great sleep, and the electrolyte drink mix for my water at workouts. They are my friends, and I'm sure they will be yours. Welcome back to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. You can find Victor on social media. His X handle is @VD Hanson, and his Facebook page is Hanson's Morning Cup. So come join him there. He's also available on YouTube. These podcasts are available on YouTube and on Rumble and Spotify. So choose your favorite outlet for that and join us there. So Victor, big problem with immigration, getting people back, immigration courts impacted. So Hegseth is sending 600 lawyers, military lawyers, to the border to help with the backlog of cases. And I was wondering your thoughts on this. I thought that was a great idea. I mean, the Trump administration, not just Pete Hegseth, are showing that the government can respond to things.
Yeah, I think the key to it was what Trump did when he came in. And I'm not trying to criticize any past appointee at all. All I'm saying is that in the first administration, you had Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, Jim Mattis, Secretary of defense. My friend HR, wonderful person as national security advisor. Jeff Sessions, a good guy at Attorney General, and Miss Elaine Chao at Transportation. They were not on the same page. And they were not certainly on the MAGA page. So when Donald Trump would have done something like this, there would be institutional. They would have somebody like Anonymous, Chad somebody. Remember that? He said, I'm a major member of the Trump administration and we're stopping him from the when. And he wasn't. He was a minor little Homeland Security staffer. But the point is that when they have a problem now, Pete Heck says, hey, I can handle it. Or maybe Marco says, I can handle it. You see what I mean? They're all trying to help, and that makes a big difference. And I think people really scowled at Trump when he said loyalty, 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 and homogeneity, but he was right. You can't have a team of rivals, not in the modern political atmosphere. So it works. And they're dealing with a very perverse pathology, and that is the left wing. It's okay to let in 12 million people. They do not need lawyers. They do not need legality. Just let them stampede the border. If they have a disease, if they have malaria, if they have COVID, if they've killed somebody, if they're raping somebody, if they're traffickers, if they've got drugs on their backpack, I don't care. Just let them in. That is the moral thing. Oh, but you're going to enforce immigration law and you're going to have to find all these people I let in, and then you're going to have to put them in a van and have a hearing for them. Oh, that's, I always go back to that scene in my own family when I had a relative. I should be careful what I say, but I was on the relative side. So we had a huge tribal family. The five of us, I think we had 12 children. And one person would have all volunteered for them to go up to the mountains for a day. They were saintly people, because I never did that. I was always writing or something, working. But anyway, they got angry because the kids were disobedient. And one of the ways they showed their disobedience, they got in a little canoe. It was time to go, and they needed to get home. And they were in a canoe, and they were paddling around the shore of the lake. And they were like 20 yards distant. And they said, time to go. I'm just using, I don't want to say the real one, Johnny and Janie. And they'd say, oh, I can't hear you. Oh, did you say time to stay? And so they would just stay off there and just out of reach. So if the parent would go in waiting, because they wanted to stay, and then the parent spanked one of them. I was happy. One of them was my kid. So, and then everybody got angry at the parent. And I asked my kid, did you or did you not know it was time to go? Yes. Were you teasing me? Yes. Okay. Did you get spanked? Yes. Are you upset? And he said, no, I deserved it. I said, good. You learned a lesson. But my point is, that's what the left are right now. Oh, they're here illegally? Oh, we have to have a hearing for every one of them. Oh, we didn't have to have a hearing for any of them to come in. But to go back home, oh, poor baby, we have to have a hearing. We're going to have 12 million hearings. That's going to cost billions of dollars and take years. Oh, we didn't know that. We had no idea when we let them in. That's how they think.
Yeah, that
so
is
the
so
cleanup is
eye-opening.
always worse than everybody knows that. You have a bunch of people over to your house and they get drunk and they trash it. It's easy. And then cleaning it up is a drag. Well, letting everybody in for the
True.
party is easy, right? But then to go find Hernando Soda, who's got 5 felonies and he's standing in Home Depot next to 3 people who are without a criminal record, and you go arrest Hernan Soto or whatever his name is, and then the 3 other people, you just have to say, well, are you legal? No. Oh, he went deliberately to Home Depot and he got my gardener and my maid. You know what I mean? It's just a lose-lose situation for Tom Holman and all those brave people in ICE. Everything is stacked against them. And the people, they had 56,000 stops at the border last month. That's amazing that they had that many people try to get back in. And that's because they've looked at all these judicial orders and the words got out to the cartels and everybody. Hey, our friends, the judges, and our friends, the Democratic Party, they're trying to stop Trump. And so when you get it across, you might be able to make it because there might be things that ICE can't do. Or if you get caught, you might have to have a hearing for 5 years in the future.
I'm sure they instruct them on things ICE can't do because they know exactly what ICE
They know
can
more
and can't
about
do.
the cartels know more about the individual judicial rulings than I ever will.
Yeah. Okay, Victor, what about, did you see this new Times of the UK article on a Chinese person online on messaging
Yes.
and on chat things was recruiting a Stanford
And
student. And the gist of the article, though, was how they were trying to recruit. And it was through this chat and messaging and sort of catering to this
she
person.
knew that they
And
knew that she had known Mandarin.
yes.
And they always do. Everybody at Stanford knows what's going on. The Stanford Review published a whole serial account of this. And they spot people in the news or that come up from the government computers that this person, if you have a Mandarin immersion school, they might think, well, why would an American go into that immersion school at 5 years old unless they had a fondness for China? Or this person is one half China. They know all that. And then when they get to the universities, they target them. And they get Mr. Chen or Mr. Chan. He had all these different names. He said, "Hey, everybody, I love who you are, and would you like to go to China? We'll pay your way, and that means we'll take you over there, and you'll be away from your parents and all your friends, and we'll indoctrinate you, and then you'll come back." And if anybody thinks I'm exaggerating, I would direct them to news stories this morning of the Chinese stealth bomber that they just they just unleashed from the media, and it's out there with all of its weaponry. And you know what? When I saw that, I went and looked at the B-2 bomber. It's the same thing. And all of the armament is the same thing. And I said to myself, where did they get that? And the answer is they got them from people coming over here and saying that, they're going to be recruited. That's why I do not understand. I do not understand why Donald Trump wants to let in 600,000 Chinese students when we already have 300,000. 1 or 2% are active espionage. 3,000 espionage students in the United States. That's what people have thought about 1 or 2%. And every one of them, when they go back, have to report to the People's Liberation auditors. What did you learn? What did you say? What did you find out? It's so much more effective than Cold War Russian or current Putin propaganda, because Russians are always portrayed in Hollywood movies, always portrayed. If you remember I'm trying to remember my favorite actors. What was the name of the enforcer that Denzel Washington was in?
Oh,
The
the
Equalizer.
Equalizer.
You remember
Yeah.
when one of them, he goes all the way to Russia and he's fighting Russian oligarchs? And then the same thing with Jack Reacher, Tom Cruise, or the same thing with Shooter with Mark Wahlberg, who's a Russian. The Russians are always the evil white guys, and they're deranged, they're tattooed, they have Orthodox crosses, they're vicious, horrible, or they're South Africans. But Chinese, no. So Russians are always easily branded as white supremacists. But man, when you're dealing with the Chinese, the first thing anybody accuses of them, they go right into the diversity, equity, inclusion sanctuary of the mind. It's like, well, you hate Chinese. Oh, this is the yellow peril again. What do you want to do? Make them work for Leland Stanford on the Southern Pacific Railroad? It's, and they feel they're an untouchable group, the espionage group. That's another pathology of DEI, not treating people according to what they do, but what their superficial appearance or identity thinks they do and can do. And it's a real problem. Donald Trump is listening. I know you're using the admissions, no doubt, for leverage on tariffs or trade or foreign policy, or as a method to break up the new India, Russia, China axis, but it's going to put us in security danger if you let in 600,000 people. They're all going to be the elite, and they're going to be the prince and princesses of the Communist Chinese Party provincial officials. And I wouldn't do it if I were you.
All right, Victor. So just a couple of things that are kind of amusing or interesting in the news at the end. Did you read that Ilhan Omar is worth $30 million? Oh my gosh.
Her husband invested in I think he has a hedge fund and a winery, and it was basically worth nothing. Nothing. And he actually owed creditors money. And then magically, suddenly, all this investment came in, and now it's worth a lot of money. I wonder why why would you invest in Ilhan Omar's new husband's failed business operation unless you could call Ilhan Omar up and say, you guys, I got a big protest outside my business of DEI people, and can you handle that? You know what I mean? That's how they do it. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. That's
I
probably
need to
what's
get my
happening.
brother in from, I don't know, Argentina. Can you handle that? Make a call. So she's wealthy. Yeah, they got just a sudden stream. I'm not saying that both
No
sides don't do it.
surprise,
They
really.
do. They do it. All of them do it.
Yeah. Well, the last thing that's a little bit in, did you see Massachusetts? They want to have a new flag. I like their old one. I don't see why they don't put it
It's
out
like
to the voters and
It's like a
include the
Cracker
old
Barrel
one.
flag.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Like the old one had a Native American on it and some other
Yes.
things. It looked kind of nice. But now they just want this really abstract nothingness.
And
But they should put it
they're
out to
getting
the
rid of the Latin
voters,
motto too.
right? Yeah, that's true.
Defend with the NSA, with defend freedom
Yeah, they want
with the
all three
sword.
choices are
It's too
just
bellicose.
all three source
It's
flags that they have
Orwellianism. It's
are
sort of like
abstract.
East
Yeah.
Asia and Oceania, just boring, monotony. We're all going to be in a little carol. That's what it is. You don't want anything that's original, controversial, appeals to the aesthetics of this noble Native American or a beautiful Latin inscription or the Cracker Barrel logo. It's just make it inoffensive as possible and it's correct. And I don't know. It's Massachusetts. There's not one Republican congresswoman
That's
or
where,
man in the entire state.
yeah, that's where all of that progressive wokeism is going.
And it's
to
infected New
nothingness.
Hampshire. They all move across the state to get no income tax, they think. And New Hampshire became a blue state. I don't know
Sad.
what to do with modern leftism. It's a social, cultural, political pathology. It really is.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a couple of comments from your Seb Gorka interview, Dr.
Seb.
Gorka.
Did you say sub?
I said Seb. I thought it was Seth.
It is Sebastian. I didn't want to.
Oh, it was Seb. I said Seb.
I know I can't hear very well, and I thought you said sub. Like there was the younger Gorka. He has Seb Gorka has a very brilliant son, and I met him. He was a Stanford student, and he was pre-med, and he was a very good athlete. And that year, there was very strange that I had 3 students who were all from marquee conservative families. There was the editor, Chris Buskirk, who had a brilliant daughter, Cola. And there was Robert Aganastelli, who had a brilliant son who was a soccer player. And there was Sebastian Gorka, and who had a brilliant son. I think his name was Paul. And they were all meritoriously highest test scores, highest grades. And right before the George Floyd DEI woke moment, they all were accepted to Stanford. They all went to Stanford. They all did superbly. And none of them, I hope they're not listening, none of them would get in today. Not because they were not preeminent, but because the DEI standards, they let 9% white males in for the next 3 years after that. But
Okay,
that's the
go ahead.
Gorka. But I interrupted.
Yeah.
Go ahead with
Yeah,
it.
so it was, we'll call him Dr. Gorka. And
Yes,
anyways,
he is.
yeah. Just watched Victor's podcast with Seb Gorka. Wow, this is one of the best of the best. I wish all the anti-MAGA folks could listen to this and understand what the Trump administration is trying to accomplish for the majority of Americans. So really like that.
I got to tell Seb that I don't think he remembers. I was an obscure professor who was visiting in the U.S. Naval Academy as the Shiffman professor in 2002-3. And I went to the Marine University a couple of times for the lecture or a panel. I met him 20 years ago. No, 22. I think it was him. I remember talking to him.
All right. And another comment on that was these are from your website. Common sense in the dark. That's why I come here to VDH for calm, informative commentary to escape the chaotic rubbish that is so prevalent on the media. And that's from Kip Hamilton. And the first one actually was from Jerry and Christine Lascodi. And then the last one was from Rumble, and it's from J.M. Mitch or Jamich. I'm not sure which. And it says the war was 100% provoked by the kooks in the Biden administration, Democratic Party, along with our so-called NATO, Euro, trash, globalist scumbag allies. There was a deal all set and in place, and Boris Johnson killed the deal on behalf of the Victoria Nuland types in the administration, which in turn caused Putin to invade. This is on the Ukraine. You guys are never willing to put yourself in Putin's shoes. What if Russia put missiles in Mexico? Ukraine better surrender or face losing the whole country. And I thought that was interesting
Yes,
because
it
I've never
is.
really
And I have
put
never,
myself
I
in
think I would
Putin's
say
shoes.
to our reader, I said on this broadcast that the problem with supplying Ukraine to the teeth is that we're violating the rules of the old Cold War, that you do not use a proxy to attack the homeland of your nuclear rival. And we did that. Khrushchev did that with Cuba. They supplied missiles right in our doorstep. And we said no. We went to DEFCON 2. So the idea we're going to supply Ukraine with the ability to hit Russian targets only through our weapons, you got to be very careful. In the Vietnam and Korea areas, when the Chinese and the Russians supplied our enemies, they were doing it in a third country. They were not supplying enemies on our border to attack the homeland of the United States. So I understand that. And I understand that I've said this so many times, that the borders of Ukraine are fluid. They were established by the current borders by Joseph Stalin when he stole what was then Poland and ethnically cleansed all Polish ethnic people, all linguistic, anybody who spoke Polish, anybody who was Roman Catholic, kicked them out, said it's now Western Ukraine. You go get your Poland from Pomerania, Belarus, and not even Belarus. You get it from Pomerania and East Prussia. And that's what they did in 1945. And then in the 50s, Khrushchev created that border and gave Ukraine extra territory as a token of Ukrainian nationalism and the fact that it was always going to be part of the Soviet Union. So now we come in and we say these borders are absolutely sacrosanct. And there's a story to that. And Barack Obama, and Trump is absolutely right when he said it's not his war. It was Barack Obama who catered to Vladimir Putin. We remember the hot mic, Medvedev, and all that stuff. And he invaded during the Obama and Biden administrations. So what are we going to do now? How do you stop the violence? Trump said yesterday 7,000 people were killed in a week. How do you stop it? Or a month? How do you stop it?
Yeah, and Putin this week is off catering to the Chinese and other
very dangerous
potential
guy.
allies.
He's a very dangerous guy. He's trying to tell us that if you arm the Ukrainians and they attack us, now you've got 3 billion people in our alliance, India, China, and Russia, and the 3 biggest land masses other than the United States in the world. And so it's very tricky what Trump's trying to do. Because everybody said, well, you got to arm them and hit the sites in Kiev, Moscow. Yeah, that's traditional military strategy, but Russia's nuclear and it's got a big alliance, and you've got to find a way to force Putin to negotiate along a DMZ that the Ukrainian people will accept after fighting heroically for this. I go back to Alexander Stubb, the Finland president, when he said we had a solution in 1939 and 40. We gave up 10% of our territory and we killed 500,000 Russians, but we were going to lose, and we were going to lose everything. So we made a deal and we said we would not be aligned with anybody. We'd be neutral, and we would not ever invade Russia, and they didn't during World War II. They sided sort of with the Nazis, but they did not go into Russian territory. And after the war, Stalin let them be. And everybody makes fun of being Finlandized, but they survived. So
Didn't Trump put a 30-day, I think, limit on him starting peace talks with
yes,
Zelensky, and that date has come and gone, and
yes,
yeah, so
and
that's a problem. That
well, I mean, Trump said he was going to have a secondary boycott, and he's going into the midterm cycles. If he puts a secondary boycott on the three countries, especially India and China, then it's going to affect our economy. It really is. And it's going to affect world oil prices right before and so he knows that it'll be effective, and they all have one thing in common. They all have nuclear weapons. So how they got together is Joe Biden did that. He was the one that brought them all together. He appeased China, he appeased Russia, and then he called Putin all these names, but he had no strategy. It wasn't we're going to negotiate. It wasn't Ukraine's going to win. It is, oh, I'll give you just enough to keep going, but I have no idea how to stop it. I don't care. I don't want to talk to Putin. He's a dictator. He's a thug. I make fun of him. That's all I need to know. We'll be here as long as it takes, but I don't know how you're going to win. That was the strategy.
All right, Victor. Well, thank you very much for all of your thoughts today on this Friday News Roundup. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to the audience for listening. This is Victor Davis Hanson and Sammy Wink, and we're signing off.